The first thing they noticed wasn't the dog. It was the silence, a kind of stillness that pressed itself flat across the abandoned outskirts of Briar Ridge, where freight trains screamed through, but people rarely stopped. Dawn had barely broken, yet the mist hung thick enough to blur shapes and turn truth into suggestion. That's when Marla Trenton spotted it. A German shepherd standing perfectly still on the shimmering steel rails, head lowered, unmoving, as if guarding something invisible. Her breath hitched. Dogs didn't behave like that. Not unless they were waiting or warning. A moment later, everything began to unravel. Marla Trenton tightened her grip on the steering wheel as the pickup rolled to a stop beside the overgrown embankment. The rails stretched ahead like twin scars cut across the land, glinting faintly under the rising sun. Her morning delivery route usually offered nothing more dramatic than a stray deer or a rusted mailbox hanging on by a screw, but today the air felt heavier, disturbed. The German shepherd stood 30 yards ahead, right between the rails, not pacing, not frightened, just standing. Marla wiped her palms on her jeans and climbed out of the truck. Gravel crunched beneath her boots, the sound too loud in the muted morning. "Hey, boy," she called, her voice gentle but steady. "You all right there?" The dog didn't move. Its coat was thick and unkempt, dark patches matted with something that looked too dull to be mud. Its ears pointed forward, eyes locked on the empty curve of the track, like it expected something or someone to come around it. A crow cawed overhead, slicing through quiet. Marla took one slow step forward. She had seen dogs on these tracks before, sure, but never like this. Never frozen with purpose, like a sentinel carved out of breath and bone. She glanced over her shoulder toward her truck. The radio inside still played low, the morning talk show murmuring about another missing kid from a town 2 hours south. She caught only fragments during the drive. 12 years old. Last seen near a convenience store, close to midnight. The kind of news that left a cold ache in the ribs. Another step. "It's all right," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." The shepherd finally moved, its head lifting, eyes cutting toward her with sharp intelligence. Not fear, not aggression. Something else. Something like urgency. Then it barked. One short, forceful sound. And immediately after, it whipped around and stared again down the track. Marla frowned. That wasn't a warning bark. That was a call, a demand. "What do you want me to see?" she murmured. The faint hum of an approaching freight train prickled in the air. Not close yet, maybe a few minutes out, but close enough that she needed to act. "Come on," she coaxed. "Get off the tracks. You need to move." The dog barked again, louder this time, its tail stiff, body vibrating with tension. Then it took 2 steps forward along the rails, stopped, glanced back at her, and let out a low whine. It was leading her. Her stomach tightened. "Shit," she whispered under her breath. A nervous tick, cursing only when something felt wrong down to the bone. She followed. The rails hummed faintly beneath her boots, distant vibration crawling through steel. The dog stayed ahead but never out of sight, pausing every so often to ensure she kept up. 50 yards in, the brush thickened, and the air carried the faint scent of rust and earth. Then she saw it. A torn backpack lay half buried near the edge of the tracks, its bright blue fabric smeared with dirt, torn straps, a cracked plastic keychain dangling from the zipper, a tiny astronaut missing an arm. Her heart kicked against her chest. "Hey!" she breathed out, crouching beside it. "Oh no!" The shepherd stood a few feet away, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She looked inside the bag. A small water bottle, a comic book with curled pages, a folded hoodie, and a name written in thick black marker on the inner flap. Evan. Marla's throat tightened. The missing kid's name from the radio wasn't Evan, but that didn't matter. A kid had been here. Recently. She could feel it. A sudden sharp blast of a train horn echoed faintly through the valley. The dog let out a frightened bark. "All right, okay, hold on," she muttered, grabbing the backpack. She scanned the ground for tracks, footprints, anything, and there, half hidden in the dirt, was one small sneaker print pointing away from the rails and into the tree line. Evan, or whoever he was, had left the tracks. Maybe wandered off. Maybe injured. Marla looked down at the dog. "Show me," she urged. The shepherd immediately darted into the trees. Branches whipped against her jacket as she pushed through the undergrowth. Sunlight flickered between leaves. The wind carried the scent of moisture and moss. The dog moved fast but not wild, stopping when she lagged behind, making sure she could follow. "Good boy," she panted, stepping over a fallen log. "You're doing good." A faint metallic clatter snapped her attention to the left, something down the slope. The dog sprinted toward the sound, barking urgently. Marla scrambled after it, sliding down the dirt as it gave way beneath her boots. Her hands clawed roots for balance. When she finally reached the bottom, she saw a narrow drainage tunnel running beneath the tracks. Dark, cold, the kind of place kids dare each other to crawl through. The dog stood at the entrance, tail low, ears pinned forward. A soft whine trembled out of its throat, and then Marla heard it. A voice, faint, weak, a child's voice. "Help, please." Her breath seized. "Oh, God, hey, I'm here." She dropped to her knees beside the tunnel's mouth, flashlight trembling in her grip as she aimed it inside. A pair of small, terrified eyes reflected back. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, lay halfway inside the tunnel, clutching one arm against his chest. His face was streaked with dirt. His jeans tore at the knee, blood dried against the skin. He blinked at the light like it hurt. Marla's voice cracked. "Kid, I've got you. Just hang on." The boy swallowed, lips trembling. "Shadow didn't leave me." Her eyes flicked to the dog. "Shadow, he barked once, not leaving his position at the tunnel entrance." "All right," she murmured, crawling inside, the cold stone scraping her elbows. "Let me take a look at you." The boy flinched when she touched his leg. "Twisted ankle," he whispered. "I fell. Couldn't get out." "What's your name?" "Evan," he whispered. "My mom, I just want to go home." The freight train horn wailed in the distance, much closer now. The rails above vibrated. Marla froze, glancing upward. If the train came through now, the entire tunnel would shake violently. If Evan was stuck inside during that. "All right," she said quickly, voice trembling from speed, not fear. "We're getting you out now." Shadow barked again, this time fiercely urging her on. She hooked her arms under Evan's shoulders. "I'm pulling you out. It's gonna hurt. You ready?" He nodded, biting his lip hard. She pulled. He cried out, but she kept moving, inch by inch, dragging him toward the light as the ground trembled under her palms. A deafening horn split the air. "Shadow, move," she shouted. The shepherd bolted back from the entrance, pacing anxiously. Marla heaved Evan clear of the tunnel, just as the first blast of the freight train thundered overhead. The ground shuddered. Evan clutched her shirt, hiding his face against her shoulder as gravel rained down the slope in tiny avalanches. Shadow pressed himself against Evan's side protectively, whining softly until the rumbling finally faded. Marla held him close until the shaking stopped. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're safe." Evan lifted his face, tears streaking through the dirt. "Shadow, he didn't leave me." He kept barking until someone came. Marla looked at the dog, ears still alert, gaze locked on the boy with fierce devotion. The air felt different now, charged, heavy with something unspoken. She reached for her phone. No signal. Of course. Briar Ridge swallowed their reception like a beast with teeth. "We'll get you help," she promised. "My truck's not far." Evan nodded weakly, but before Marla could stand, Shadow suddenly stiffened, head snapping toward the trees, body rigid, a low growl vibrating from his chest. Marla's pulse skipped. "What is it?" she whispered. The dog growled deeper, stepping in front of Evan. Then a voice drifted through the trees. A man's voice, raspy, low, too calm. "Well now," it drawled, "ain't this something?" Marla's blood ran cold. Shadow's growl sharpened. Evan clutched her arm, eyes wide with terror. "He followed me," Evan whispered. "I ran." Shadow tried to stop him. Marla slowly lifted her head toward the figure emerging through the trees. A man in a torn jacket, mud-caked boots, eyes too still to belong to anything safe. Shadow bared his teeth. The man smiled. Well, he murmured, looks like I'm not done yet. Marla's breath hitched as the man stepped closer, the mud of the forest floor clinging to his boots with every calculated step. The sun had risen further now, but the light filtered through the thick canopy in slanted, ghostly streaks, barely illuminating the tension in the clearing. Shadow's growl deepened, his hackles raised, ears pinned forward. The German shepherd was not just protective. He was assessing, calculating, like he already knew the man's intentions. Evan trembled behind Marla, clutching the torn hoodie she had draped over his shoulders. "Mom, my mom," he whispered, barely audible. His small hands gripped her sleeve, nails digging into denim. "Shoo," Marla said softly, trying to steady both herself and the boy. Her voice felt fragile, a thin thread against the oppressive quiet. "It's okay. Just stay behind me." The man stopped 10 feet from them. Shoulders relaxed, but every inch of him screamed danger. His eyes were sharp, cold, and calculating, and they lingered on Evan with an unsettling focus. Well, he said again, almost a murmur, "Looks like your little friend here has some unusual loyalty." Shadow barked, a sharp, commanding sound that cut to the tension like a whip. The dog didn't move closer. He stayed in front of Evan, but his posture was tense, ready to strike. The man's lips curved into a slow, controlled smile. "I didn't expect to see anyone out here, least of all someone trying to play hero." He paused, tilting his head. "You're lucky, lady. Real lucky." Marla's mind raced. She tried to process the man's tone. Dangerous, yes, but not reckless. Deliberate, calculated. He was testing them, measuring every reaction. "Who are you?" she demanded, keeping her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. "Let's just say someone with unfinished business." He took another step, boots crunching against the gravel near the drainage tunnel. "And this little guy," he gestured to Evan, "he owes me something." Evan's grip on Marla tightened. "No, you can't, he's mine," he shouted, his voice breaking. The man's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned, sharper this time. "Mine," he echoed, voice low. "We'll see about that." Shadow lunged forward with ferocious bark, teeth bared, but Marla caught the dog by the collar just in time. She could feel the tension thrumming through his muscles, a living wire ready to snap. "Shadow, stay," she ordered, her voice firm but shaking. The dog's ears flicked toward her, still alert, but he reluctantly held his position. The man's gaze flicked between Marla and Shadow. Smart dog. Too smart, maybe. He pulled a thin object from his jacket, a pocket knife, not brandished, not threatening openly, but visible enough to make Marla's pulse hammer. "Back off," she said, stepping slightly in front of Evan, heart thundering. Her eyes never left the knife. "We're not going anywhere until you leave him alone." The man chuckled softly, like a sound scraped from the bottom of a well. "You think it's that simple? Kids run away. Someone's supposed to find him. And here you are, stepping right into my path." He glanced down at Evan. "You know, most people wouldn't care. But some of us, we follow through." Marla's mind spun. Why would someone claim Evan in this remote place? The boy wasn't hurt seriously, just a twisted ankle. But there was something unspoken, a story in the man's gaze, something Marla couldn't place. She tried to stall, buying seconds. "Listen," she said carefully. "I don't know what you want, but you're not taking him anywhere until I call the authorities." "Authorities?" His laughter was soft, hollow. "Good luck with that. Briar Ridge isn't kind to strangers, and the phone lines around here, well, they're useless." He gestured vaguely toward the dense trees beyond the tracks. "Besides, who would believe a little story about a kid and a German shepherd? Cute, maybe, but unbelievable. And by the time anyone checks," he let the words hang, dangerous, unfinished. Marla felt Evan shake against her side. "Mom!" "He's scary," he whispered. "I know," she murmured, pressing a hand into his back. She needed a plan. Fast. Her eyes flicked to Shadow, whose growl had subsided into a low rumble, muscles coiled like springs. He trusted her. He'd follow her lead, but she needed to act decisively. Look, she said, keeping her voice calm. Whatever you're here for, there's no reason to hurt him or me. Step back. Let's talk. The man's gaze narrowed. Talk? Sure, I can talk. But actions speak louder, don't they? He shifted, the knife glinting briefly in a beam of sunlight. Shadow's growl rose again. Marla tightened her grip. Stay. Just stay. Suddenly, Evan gasped. Mom, the tunnel. Marla's head whipped around. From the darkness beneath the rails, faint movement flickered, a shadow curling from the entrance. Another pair of eyes caught the sunlight for a split second before vanishing again. The man's expression changed ever so slightly, a flicker of surprise, maybe concern. He didn't move, but Marla noticed it. Someone else, she whispered. The man nodded subtly. Not exactly mine, but could become yours. Before she could react, the underbrush rustled violently. Another figure emerged, a teenage boy, tall, wiry, with wild eyes, clutching a metal pipe. Not quite aggressive, not quite threatening, but clearly ready to intervene. Don't! The man barked sharply. His calm demeanor cracked for an instant, revealing something harsher underneath. Shadow growled, ears back, crouching slightly as if preparing to defend Evan against both of them. Marla's heart raced. The sudden appearance of a second person changed everything. She had to act. Evan, she said quietly, stay behind me. Keep low. The teenage boy froze a few feet away, eyes darting between Marla and the man. I'm not going to hurt him, he said quickly, voice uneven. Just leave. The man cursed under his breath. Damn it, this wasn't supposed to happen. He glared at the boy, then at Marla, tension coiling like a snake. You need to leave, Marla said firmly, ignoring the throbbing pulse in her temples. All of you, now. The man stepped forward, knife raised just slightly. You don't understand. I understand enough. Marla shouted. You don't scare me. A tense silence followed. Birds scattered overhead, startled by the sudden noises. Shadow barked once, short and sharp, sending a clear warning. Then, unexpected, the man lowered the knife. Just a fraction, barely noticeable, but enough for Marla to sense the shift. You're persistent, he muttered. I'll give you that. The teenage boy slumped slightly, pipe lowering. Marla realized he wasn't helping the man. He was afraid, too. You're not taking him, she said again, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Not while I'm here. The man's eyes flicked to Evan, then to Shadow, then back at Marla. And for a moment, a brief, flickering heartbeat, she saw something in him. Not remorse, not kindness, but recognition, maybe even respect. Fine, he said finally, the knife disappearing into his jacket. This isn't over. He retreated into the trees with a glance over his shoulder, muttering something under his breath that Marla didn't catch. The teenage boy followed a few seconds later, still tense, still unsure. The forest fell into an eerie silence once more. Shadow collapsed next to Evan, tongue lolling, ears finally relaxing. Marla sank to her knees beside them, hands shaking. Are you okay? She whispered to Evan. He nodded, face pale but relieved. Yeah, thanks to him, he said, pointing at Shadow. Shadow didn't leave me. Marla knelt beside the dog, stroking his head gently. Good boy, she murmured. You saved him. We both owe you. The adrenaline drained, leaving a hollow ache behind her ribs. She looked up at the sun, now climbing higher, and realized how vulnerable they'd been, how close they'd come to disaster. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Finally, a signal. She ignored it for the moment, focusing on Evan and Shadow, and on the unspoken truth hanging in the air. Someone in Briar Ridge wanted Evan, and they weren't done yet. Marla took a deep breath, heart hammering. She knew one thing. They had to get out of clearing, fast. But she also knew that whoever the man had been, he wasn't the only danger lurking in the shadows of Briar Ridge. She glanced down at Evan, then at Shadow, and whispered, We're not safe yet. Not until we figure out why. Shadow whined softly, nudging Evan closer, and Marla realized the dog understood. Underneath the fear, the adrenaline, and the tension One thing was clear. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The forest seemed closing around them as Marla, Evan, and Shadow picked their way back toward her truck. The air was damp with morning mist, the scent of wet earth mingling with the faint metallic tang of the tracks. Every snapping twig and rustling leaf set Marla's nerves on edge. She had no idea how far the man had gone, or if he would return. Evan limped along beside her, the torn hoodie still wrapped tight around his small frame. Shadow padded silently, alert, ears swiveling toward every distant sound. The boy glanced up at the dog occasionally, his small hand brushing Shadow's coat. "He didn't leave me," he whispered, eyes wide with awe. "I know," Marla said softly. "He's not going anywhere." They emerged from the underbrush onto the gravel road that led to the main highway. The truck gleamed faintly through the mist. Marla's pulse began to settle, until a sudden sound froze her blood. A car engine. Low, deliberate, slow, coming from the opposite direction. Marla crouched slightly behind the truck, Shadow immediately moving into position in front of Evan. Evan's eyes widened. "Mom?" The headlights cut through the fog. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop several yards away. The man from the track stepped out, arms loose at his sides, a faint smirk playing on his lips. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, two other men emerged, one tall, muscular, face obscured by a hood, the other shorter, wiry, carrying a duffel bag. The man from before raised a hand in a casual wave, as if they were having a friendly chat, not stalking a boy in the middle of nowhere. Marla's stomach churned. "Stay close," she whispered to Evan, sliding the door open slowly. The man's gaze flicked to the truck, to the forest, to Shadow. "Interesting," he said, voice calm but hard. "You've got yourself a little guardian, haven't you?" Shadow growled, low and guttural, the kind of sound that vibrated through the chest and set nerves on edge. Marla put her hands on his shoulders, pressing gently. "Stay," she commanded. The dog obeyed, though his growl never ceased. The man stepped closer. "We're not here to hurt him," he said, eyes flicking to Evan. "Not if we don't have to, but we need to talk." Marla gritted her teeth. "Talk? You've already threatened him. What kind of talk is that?" The man exhaled slowly, almost tiredly. "You've got courage, I'll give you that. But courage can't protect you from truth." Marla's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "The truth?" He nodded. "Yes, the truth about Evan." Evan flinched. What do you mean?" The man's smirk softened, almost humanly. "He's not just some missing kid from the next town over. He's part of something bigger, something people would kill to hide." Marla felt her chest tighten. She had thought she was protecting him from a stranger, from immediate danger, but now she realized the danger was far more complicated. "Explain," she said, voice firm despite the shaking of her hands. The man glanced at his companions, then back at them. Evan's father. He was involved with people who should never have been trusted. Criminals. Dangerous ones. And after his father disappeared, certain things came to light. Things that some people want buried. And Evan knows more than he realizes. Evan's small hands went to his chest. I don't understand." Marla placed a protective arm around him. "It's okay. You're safe with me," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure it was true. The man raised a hand, showing he meant no immediate harm. "We were tracking him. Yes, making sure he was safe. Shadow here saved you from what could have been a very messy situation." Evan blinked. He saved me?" Shadow nudged him gently, tail wagging faintly. Evan hugged the dog instinctively. "Thank you, Shadow," he whispered, voice trembling. Marla's mind raced. This didn't make sense. The man was dangerous, yet he said they weren't here to harm the boy. But why? "You're not going to hurt him?" she demanded, voice sharp. "No," the man said calmly. "Not if I can help it. But you need to know the truth, and you need to decide what comes next." The other men shifted behind him, uneasy, watching Marla closely. She noticed a tension in their posture, the kind that came from men used to obeying, not thinking. "Talk," Marla said, quickly. The man nodded. Evan's father. He stumbled onto something dangerous. He tried to protect Evan from people who would kill for what they had. After he disappeared, Shadow was assigned to make sure Evan stayed alive, no matter what. Shadow has been more than a dog, a guardian, trained for this exact scenario. You've seen him today, haven't you? Evan's wide eyes flicked to Shadow. Really? Marla knelt beside him. Yes, he saved you, and he's not leaving your side. The man's gaze softened slightly. There's a group looking for Evan. Dangerous. They'll stop at nothing. That's why we were here today, to see if he was safe. You've done well, lady, but safety, it's temporary. Briar Ridge is tricky. Shadows hide everywhere. Marla swallowed hard. So what now? The man gestured toward the road. We take him somewhere secure. Temporary. Then we figure out the next steps. But only if you cooperate. You've already risked too much by being here. Marla looked at Evan, then at Shadow, who growled softly but didn't move from the boy's side. He had already decided what mattered. Evan tugged her sleeve. Mom, can we trust him? Marla took a deep breath, heart pounding. We have to, she whispered. She could see the truth in the man's eyes, the same truth that Shadow had sensed. Danger was real. Trust was necessary. The man nodded toward the SUV. Step carefully. Shadow stays with him. Marla lifted Evan into her arms, careful of the twisted ankle. Shadow leapt beside the truck, tail stiff but obedient. Marla glanced around, the tracks, the forest, the empty gravel roads. The danger wasn't over, but at least they had a chance. The SUV doors opened. One of the men stepped forward to help. Evan clung to Marla, whispering, I'm scared. I know, Marla said softly, but you're not alone anymore. As they approached the SUV, the man who had threatened them earlier spoke again. Evan, you got courage too. I see that. And one day, maybe you'll understand what Shadow has done for you. Evan looked at the German shepherd, eyes wide. Shadow nuzzled him gently, licking his cheek. The boy laughed softly, a shaky but genuine sound. Marla felt something shift in her chest, a weight lifting, replaced by cautious hope. The SUV's engine roared to life. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they drove away, the mist curling around the rails like smoke from a candle. Shadow sat in the back, eyes fixed on Evan, alert but calm. Marla exhaled slowly. We're getting through this, she murmured. Together. Evan leaned against her, finally smiling. Shadow, save me, he said again. Yes, she said softly, voice thick with emotion. He did, and he'll keep doing it. The road stretched ahead, winding through the morning fog. Briar Ridge had its shadows, its secrets, but for now they were safe. Not perfectly safe, not forever, but alive. Marla glanced at Shadow one last time, running alongside the SUV as it picked up speed, and felt a quiet, unwavering gratitude. A guardian, a hero, a friend. He had melted the walls around Evan's fear and hers. And in that moment, the weight of the morning, the terror, and the unknown future gave way to something rare and profound. Trust. The boy and the dog, side by side, human and guardian. And Marla, who had stumbled into this mess thinking she was a savior, realized sometimes the ones you save end up saving you instead. The sun broke through the clouds, casting golden streaks across the tracks they had left behind. And in that light, Briar Ridge didn't feel quite so lonely, quite so threatening. Not when hearts had been moved, bonds had been forged, and a German shepherd had proven that love and loyalty could shine through even the darkest of shadows. Marla whispered quietly, almost to herself, Good boy, Shadow, the best of us in the end. Evan leaned his head against the dog's side, eyes closed, trusting completely. And Marla knew, as the SUV disappeared around a bend, that this was a moment that would linger forever, not for the danger they had faced, but for the courage, the loyalty, and the small, steadfast heart of a dog who never left a child behind. The road ahead was uncertain, the world dangerous. But in the quiet between breaths, in the small victories, in the connection of human and animal, they had found something unbreakable, hope. And sometimes, hope was enough.